the best speakers are the best listeners. So you need to really listen and tune in to your audience. What do they really need? Maybe they say they need something, but you have to be so good that you can kind of listen between the lines. What is their unsaid need? If you can hit that and help them with what they didn't know they really needed, oh my God, you are really helping people.
This is Denmark Real. My name is Ammar. With me today is Asger Lindholdt. Asger, you have a PhD in chemical engineering. You speak more than 6 languages, right?
Yeah, I do speak some languages. Yeah, not fluent, all of them, obviously.
And you're also a keynote trainer, TEDx trainer, and more, and training people in public speaking.
That's very true. Yeah.
How did you jump from? Welcome to you first. And how did you jump from chemistry to public speaking?
Big question. First of all, Ammar, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure. So, well, it's actually a long story. See, I think we get to be shaped a lot by our circumstances. And I grew up in a family that really loved science and really went down that road. So I obviously got inspired by that. And that led me to study engineering. And I think I really wanted to, on a subconscious level, I didn't know it at that time, I wanted a little bit more appreciation and make my dad proud. So I decided to study engineering, and I put all my effort into that. And then I worked a few years in the industry. I wasn't fulfilled at all. I was just going to work primarily just to get the money, but I didn't know what to do. Then I had some friends that were studying at doing their PhD at the university, and I thought maybe that would be a great chance to really get to work with some exciting technology. And I did have a pretty good time as a student there. And then I did my 3 years as a PhD student there. But again, it wasn't fulfilling me on a deeper level. It was in many ways interesting, but I wasn't fulfilled. So I didn't really know what I wanted. But then I discovered through trying a lot of different things that I actually like teaching. I love learning, and I love to help people learn. And I thought this stage was an amazing place, because sometimes I would go out and hear speakers, and the really good speakers, they could change things. I could feel it inside my heart. And it wasn't just information, it was about changing my beliefs. And I wanted to be able to do that with people and to help more. So yeah, it probably came because I joined early on a club called Toastmasters, because first of all, I thought, yeah, it's a nice skill to have at work. But then I discovered it's actually my passion to be on that stage. And now it's equally as much my passion to help people to get on that stage. It simply just feels amazing when I have a client and they said, yes, this is exactly what I needed. And you see that spark in their eyes. And I didn't see that spark when I looked into the computer screen when I was working as an engineer. So for me, it's a lot about human connection. And I feel I get that a lot more when I speak. And listen. It's actually one of the most important things as a speaker, to listen.
But how important is it to stand on that stage and perform?
For me, it's not about performing. If you're a performer, it's not really you. You want to be yourself. You want to be your authentic self. You obviously want to be your best version. But for me, to see that I've helped some people, to have somebody a few years ago, I remember I spoke at a high school, and a girl came up to me afterwards, and she said, oh, I thought I was the only one that had that problem. I talked about how I was trying to find my passion. I didn't know really what I wanted. And another guy came up after the talk and said, now I know what I want to do. That just blessed my day. And I still remember this many years later. So this for me is true joy. So it is very, very important.
Yeah. What are some of the difficulties that one could face while presenting themselves or getting out on the stage?
So I think for the vast majority, it's fear. It's really, are you good enough? Are you worthy enough? A lot of times I see speakers that want to give a lot of information. They speak fast because all this anxiety hits us. Maybe we haven't been given enough love, attention, whatever the reason might be. So for most speakers, at least when they start, it's a lot about just being comfortable on the stage. So you got to get out there, get some reps, maybe 50, 100, and then you kind of, get used to being on the stage, being comfortable, having pauses, daring to be on that stage and just be comfortable being you, because that's ultimately what people want. Obviously, they want to see you in a good version. So dealing with the fear, I think, is the biggest thing for most people.
Okay. So I see a lot of, let's say, people in high school, both girls and guys, that are really doing their best to get that best grade, and they focus so much about learning the material and not so much on presenting it. And it's like a kid. You have maybe something in your mind, but you cannot tell it. And if you cannot tell it, or you cannot present it, it doesn't matter that you know it.
That's so true.
I think presentation is so important, because you could have all the skills, but if you cannot speak it out, if you cannot communicate, it doesn't matter.
That's so true. I mean, you can make the best research in the world, you can have the best idea, but if you cannot communicate that idea, it has zero value. And that's why it's such a pity, because most kids in school don't learn it. I mean, the first 9 years I went to school, there was no training. I went to high school, we did a few presentations and no feedback on the delivery skills. I went to university, no training at all either. During my PhD, no training either. I did a few presentations at conferences and so on, but no training. People don't get training. And back in the old days, it actually used to be the most important thing. If you go back in the old Greek world, that was the most important thing. Learning rhetoric, learning to present your ideas. And I think we need to shift it back so we become much better speakers, that we can present our ideas. And it's not just for the individual person. It's because obviously it's great if you can go out and do that. But for me, it's also bigger. It's about democracy. It's about you being able to play a role in the democracy, because if you cannot make your ideas, if you cannot present them, how can you participate in a democracy? So it goes a little bit deeper than just your own self. We need people, and we need to hear their arguments, their voices. Yeah.
I think that's true. That's true, because there is so many. They know how to write things. They know how to present them by writing it, but speaking it up, especially in front of an audience, that is where they hit a problem. They hit a wall. So how should one person train that? What are the steps to get that training and the necessary training?
Well, the best thing I think is go out there and do it. Speak as much as you can, and record yourself. Record yourself. It can be could be listening to yourself. If it's too scary to see yourself on video, just listen to yourself. But also get some mentors that can really see this is where you need to improve. Read books, practice your speech. Find some people and practice it in front of them, because that's the best practice you can get. Studies have shown if you just practice at home alone, you're not going to get the best results. But if you can practice in front of people, you're going to get a much better result, because it's like a little bit more real. So it's a lot about training. It's a lot about having a system, because I remember when I started out, I would watch YouTube videos. I would go see other people speak. And all of this was great. But I ultimately think you need systems, because if you have a system, you can then improve upon that. If you get a tip here and there, it's a little bit hard to set it together. So when I work with people, I always try to give them like a framework, and then we obviously tailor it a little bit to them, but then you have a starting point. Like, how should you structure your talk, for instance? What is a great way to have a start? What needs to come after the start? So you really need to have a structure in your talk, and then you can see, does that Is that what other great speakers are doing? Are they doing that? And you can notice that. So you open the doors if you have some frameworks. So I think that is crucial.
Okay. When you tell a story on stage,
Yeah.
does that story have a structure, a different structure? Because I know that storytelling is an art.
Yeah.
And it is one that we could perfect. Not that it has to be perfect all the time, but it is an ongoing process toward that perfection. For me, it is, at least. I want to make it better and better. But there's something that's called the hero's journey also. Could you tell me about storytelling and all these kind of things?
See, storytelling is amazing. Our brains are made for stories. If you notice conversation between people, you're going to notice that probably 2/3 of the conversation are stories. So our brain is really shaped for stories. The one, like back in the old days when we sat at the savannah, you wanted to be around the campfire with the best storyteller. Because if you listen to those stories, you would know what to do when you had to defend yourself against the lion, hunt down those animals. That's how information was passed on. So you wanted to be next to that fire. So the best storytellers survived. And that's why we are great storytellers. But for some reason, when we go on stage, a lot of times we forget to tell stories. We become so academic. We think we need to bombard our audience with information so they become info beasts. Like it's just too much. So there is a structure to great stories. And, pretty much all movies have that story. There's the hero's journey. It's a very typical journey. For instance, in the Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, that's a hero's journey, right? He has to discover himself. And a true hero, he has typically two journeys. There's the outer journey that is beating the empire, but then there's also the inner journey. And that is the most interesting journey we take. So for him, it's really about believing in the Force. It's his inner struggle with his dad, Darth Vader. And that is, for me, the most interesting. So a great story, you need to start setting the scene. We need to create curiosity. Something special has to happen. I could describe a scene. Oh, I'm out in my garden. I'm walking around. There's some flowers. That's boring. But if I say, hey, over there in the corner, there's a leg, part of a leg getting up through the ground. And it's like, oh, what's that? That's kind of interesting. That creates curiosity. So you need to describe the scene, and you need to have certain characters as well in a story. Science-based storytelling that really transforms people say that you need 3 characters. And you need, obviously, the hero, the main character, the antagonist that we are fighting. But the character most people often forget is the mentor. Every hero needs to have a helper, a mentor. If you see any of the like Superman, Batman, they all have some struggles. They all have mentors. They all have people that help them, because we cannot relate. We cannot connect with somebody that doesn't have a flaw. And that is why we as speakers, we should also not strive to be perfect, but much more just to be passionate. If you make a mistake on the stage, that's okay. Actually, your audience will like you for it. So once you have these 3 characters, you also have to have a conflict. The whole story, the heart in the story is the conflict. So the interesting thing is, how is that conflict then resolved? So most of the story, or most of the time in the story, we'll be dealing with how to handle or solve this conflict. And then there's this resolution. That's kind of like the last part. And then there's the change. There's a change in the hero after the story. So if Star Wars, obviously Luke becomes much more calm, believes in the Force. He's much stronger afterwards. So he changed inside himself as well. So that for me is really the key in a story: having a conflict, having these characters, being able to describe the scene, and describing the change the characters have, both on the outside and on the inside. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that you challenged me a bit and said, it shouldn't be perfect. Yes, it could be better, but it's mostly about the passion that the teller, storyteller are coming in with.
Yeah.
That's really good.
We need to take off this armor. We don't need to be perfect because the audience will relate with us. I used to struggle so much with this. Do I still struggle with it? Yes, I do. Because we all just want to be loved, right? And we think for some stupid reason that we need to be perfect to be loved. But we're going to be loved anyway, even though we make mistakes. So if you're passionate and you're prepared and you have done your research, that you know your topic, you are so ready to hit that stage. Yeah. I think for me, probably my best moment, one of my best moments was when at that time, I wasn't training people. I just really discovered my passion and I went on stage. It was at Narborough Theater, and I think about 300 people came to watch me. And I got to share a story about a girlfriend I've had for 5 years and how she then cheated on me, and my story trying to win her back. Because she was really passionate about music and dancing. And if there's something I'm terrible at, that is dancing. I have total no talent within music. So then I was doing a lot of different things. And the people really had a good time when I told that story. And I think they could see some of the things in themselves. Like we all have these stupid, weird things we do, but we don't tell people, maybe very, very few people. So it was just an amazing experience to go out there and share my vulnerabilities and be okay with it. And just, receiving that people really admired that. That was just amazing. It made me get to speak at Bremen Theater in front of 1,000 people. So I was doing something right. And that really also gave me like, yeah, maybe I can push this a little bit further than just, a night out having fun. Yeah.
Where does all that passion come from for striving that much? You have a PhD in chemistry, and you're now you're working with public speaking
Yeah.
and Talender.dk. Where does all this energy come from?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think I'm just, high on life. I really like life, and I want to make the most out of this one. Maybe we get a second life, but I'm saying, what if we don't? Why not make the most out of it? So there is a passion to do it. And I think if you look at psychology, for instance, Maslow's hierarchy, right? Up in the upper part, it is self-development. I have my basics pretty much under control. Food, safety. I got my beautiful 3 kids, my wonderful wife, all of those things. Not that there aren't issues now and then in the lower parts. Of course there are, but I think that helps me to really go in that path towards self-development. So when I train people, when I get on the stage, it also transforms me as a person. And I just love that. I think progress is beautiful. I used to go very much and strive for the results. Of course I do that. But for me, it's just, wow, I had a great session with someone, or if I get mentoring, because I get mentoring too. And I go from there and like, yeah, that changed me. I got some new insights. That just really makes me happy. I would much rather develop my inner self than my outer self. I think a lot of people spend their money on houses, cars, and nothing wrong with that. Of course, you should. But for me, the most interesting part is the inside, developing that. So I think that is one of the reasons. Another thing, probably I grew up in a family with a lot of fights, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming between my parents. And my dad had a little bit hard time to really show that appreciation, show that love. So for many years, I struggled with my self-worth. And as a compensation, a lot of people try to seek outer success. So part of me, especially maybe when I got on stage, was also to compensate a little bit to get that appreciation, get that love from other people. But that's the wrong reason to get on the stage. You shouldn't do it for you. You should when you are on the stage, you must care for that audience. You must be there for them. You must really love your audience. You must love them more than any other speaker, because if you really care for them, you can help them, and you need to put your own little ego aside. So I don't know if that answers your question. It was a little bit here and there.
I heard that it is never about that speaker. It's always about the audience.
Yeah.
So it's about how you can evoke an emotion, or how can you change the energy. So it's not about the speaker and the teller. It's more about how can you affect them? How can you change the level of energy?
Totally. I mean, you just said the most important thing that any speaker should do. Like, it's not about giving them information. It's not about giving them all of those things. It's about changing a belief, because as you know, if you change a belief, anything is possible. I mean, we can find the information. Like, it's so easy today. It's 2-3 clicks away, and you have that book, you have that video. So, I mean, if it was just about information, we would all be millionaires. We would all be millionaires with 6 packs, right? No problem. But the big challenge is the belief. And so for me, that changed everything. I got to go to a seminar, I think it was about 7 years ago, heard an amazing speaker, and there I changed my belief that I too could go on stage. And that is just still with me today. I don't remember many of the other things, but that belief stick with me. So when you are out speaking, think about the beliefs you can change, less about the information you give. It's all about belief, because that was where the true power comes, because then people will find that information themselves. They can do that. Of course, you give them information, but still, it's about the belief.
Yeah. So it's trying to get this gift packed in a beautiful package and deliver it in a nice way. So it is the information, but it has to be delivered in a certain way. So it is not just that information that are very academic, because that is just, it's not showing them any picture. Because storytelling, isn't it about showing them it, like not telling them it, but really showing the story, folding it out and show them the places, putting imagery things in their mind and senses to try to connect with that real happening that happened back then in the story.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, you could be teaching this yourself. I mean, there are 2 ways we can learn. We can go out and we can do something. We can try it ourselves. That is typically the best way to do it. But then the second best way is through a story, because our brains are made so that we can imagine things. We're the only creature on this planet, and we can imagine things. So when I tell my story, you will put yourself into that story. So if you can describe the pictures, like you said, the emotions, what happened, can you describe that scene, that thing that happened, those thoughts you had in your mind, all of that, so the people become, part of that story, and they put themselves in there. Then it's like actually like having been there, having done that. So that's why it's so powerful. It's visualizing things. And I mean, we should visualize more. I will do that sometimes before I speak, visualize my speech. And it's a beautiful thing, because it always turns out perfect when I visualize it. So my brain automatically gets some, wait, man, that, 10 great speeches in my belt right here, that helps my confidence. So going out there and doing it is the best thing, but also visualizing it. And like you said, really put the pictures, put the emotions on that helps.
So we are actually transferring experience. So I have an experience in my body, in my mind that happened to me, and I want to transfer that over to you. And I can do that through a story, where I show you the whole thing, with everything, with the feelings, the emotions. And this is the thing that I see actually. When a person tells a story on the stage, if you cannot relive it, it's just dead. Just dead story. You are not actually, you're not there in the story. You have to be there in the story. Am I also on something?
I mean, again, it's beautiful what you say. It's so right. It's so right. And I love your words. I love your words. You know, the thing about you transfer a story to them or an experience to them. I mean, that's beautifully said. I love that. I'm gonna take that with me.
Yeah, because it's downloading information onto their minds, and not only information. It is actually the whole story, the whole experience that you are downloading.
You get the whole
down to the.
thing. I mean, you get the whole thing because when you wake up in the morning or if you think about a special place, you don't think about a piece of information. You think about a feeling or a picture, right? When you think, when I think about my daughters, I don't think about, you know, how old they are. You know, I think about, you know, I get that feeling if I pick her up from school and I see her run towards me, all she can with that smile on, and she yells, "Dad," and she gives me this hug that I can really feel. That's what I think. And that transfers that experience. So that's very right. And as you said, you need to be able to relive a story. Don't just retell, you know, relive it. So, for instance, a great way to relive a story is to put in dialogue. And I stood there in the door, and then the old gray man said, "What are you doing here?" Right? So you get to become in the scene. I'm just making something up now, but that's a dialogue. A dialogue. He just said something. You feel you're right there. I mean, I could have put more words on, described it more if I was telling a story. So put in dialogue every now and then. That's great. 99% of speakers, at least I would say novice speakers, don't put in enough dialogue.
I think also these movements with your hands, like I felt like my hair is standing and I had so goosebumps. You are showing it really, and you feel it at that moment. And I think it's storytelling is so beautiful because words are not dead. Words are symbols for something else.
Yeah.
And if we use words just to describe words, just to use them academically as a word, it is dead. It is just an information transformation or transferring. It's not the experience, and if it lacks experience, it is just dead. For me, at least, it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, we are human beings. We are emotional creatures. First of all, we have emotions. And I love the word emotion. Emotion. You need to have an emotion to move. So if you cannot move your audience, if you cannot create emotions, you're never going to move them. You have to create emotions. But again, we live in a society, sometimes we're scared of showing emotions. Maybe we're scared of our own emotions. I mean, we run away from them. There are so many people running away from them. Do I do it every now and then? Of course I do. I try not to, but we overeat. Maybe we over exercise. We go out in the weekends and you cannot even strike up a conversation with a stranger without having, you know, crammed 5, 6 beers at least. What is that? It's wrong. We need to be able to be okay with our emotions. So you got to move that audience. That's the first thing you got to do.
Yeah. As you said, it is very, 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 very true because we are always trying to move the focus, and what you focus on is where the energy flows. And if you're focused on the beer, you focus on the training, you focus on all this eating, you are keeping yourself active, and that thing that is active is again shifting your focus to something that you no shifting your focus away from what you should be focusing on, which is your feelings, emotions, and what and how you feel right now, and what you can do so what you can do about it. So it's actually keeping yourself busy that is the problem, or what?
Yeah, I agree. And you put it again very well. I love those words that we move ourselves away from it. So when I go out and speak, I always get nervous. The thing is just now I know it's part of the process. And one thing I learned from a very good friend of mine, Asbjørn Jensen, is a good friend, and we have this company together. he said, when the fear comes, and I've taken this tool from him, he just says, I just look at it. I take it up and I look at it. So I do the same now. It's like, hi, fear, you are here. And I believe every emotion we have wants us to do something good. It is there for a positive reason. Now, there might be a lot of negative side benefits with that emotion. So we might want to change down the road that emotion, but there is something good about that emotion. So that fear is telling me, don't get up there, don't try to think you are somebody. And maybe it also makes me try harder to train more, to practice more. So there is something positive in it. But instead of running away from it, I stay with that feeling. And the funny thing is, it becomes less. If you dare to stay with the emotion, it will be diminished over time. It comes from a psychological genre called acceptance commitment therapy, meaning just stay within that emotion and you'll feel better. So when the fear comes, don't run away from it. Embrace it, hug it, think about the positive things it's doing for you. And then I say, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. Does that make sense to you?
It's pushing the limits, and it's also right, because think about it. If there is nothing pushes you back, or nothing, if there is no challenge in it, it's not fun. Think about, I'll try to put it in some imaginary. If you are a guy going after a girl, if she is easy, you will be tired of her like that. It's not fun, and it is not. It just, I got her. What? So what? But if it's a challenge. I think it's you fight for her and you want to get her. Yeah. It's like a lion running after a gazelle. If it just lies there, it's boring. It has to be a challenge. It has to be something where you are actually putting some work in, and there is forces that fight you back. Is it something like that?
I think so, yeah. I mean, flirtation is a great thing where you're flirting back and forth, you're kind of teasing each other. You don't really know, is she interested, or am I interested? So there is a bounce back and forth. I do think so. And as with anything, the harder it has been, the more you appreciate it. So if it was easy, you don't appreciate it so much. And that, for instance, at the moment, I'm being mentored by a guy, and I pay the guy money, obviously, to get this mentoring. But that also means I will put in more effort because I've put more at stake. So you can say if it's easy, you're probably not going to do it as much. Yeah, that I agree with that.
Yeah, because what is the problem with not paying money for something? Because it's a lot of people think that they should get it for free, but that is not going to help them that much, because you are not going to take the course seriously or the mentor seriously.
No.
This is what I found myself, actually.
You're not going to, because you're just accountable to yourself. And for me, that is maybe that is just me, but for me, that's kind of a low standard. But if I'm accountable to someone else, that helps me. So one of the best things people can do is get a mentor, or if you want a cheaper version of a mentor, is an accountability partner. Find somebody that you exchange, let's say, a weekly plan with, and say, this is my weekly plan. I'm going to do this and this and this. And then next week when you talk, maybe you talk Monday at some time, and say, okay, I didn't get this and this done. You have to justify to that person why you didn't do it. So that's a little bit of pushing yourself and being more accountable. So yeah, a lot of people, if you take an online course and you buy it at Udemy for $10 or $20, how many finish that course? Very few people, I think, maybe 3%, 5% max. But if you paid somebody $5,000 for training, obviously it's good training. If you pay that amount of money, you will finish the course. You will probably do every single thing that guy says. So put in, the more you want to put, the more you should put in, I think.
So back to the tips for the training of a person that should be, just if I want to go on stage, which I will be going, what should I do?
Oh yeah.
Is that training for the voice? Is that training for Where should I start?
Yeah, well, as I said, the best speakers are the best listeners. So you need to really listen and tune in to your audience. What do they really need? Maybe they say they need something, but you have to be so good that you can kind of listen between the lines. What is their unsaid need? If you can hit that and help them with what they didn't know they really needed, oh my God, you are really helping people. So when people come for training, there's a good old saying, I think it was Henry Ford. If the client says, what do you want? I want a faster horse, but you give them the car instead. So the first thing you think about, what is it the audience needs? And then you try to give them that. And you do it through storytellings, you do it through examples. You have to have a little bit of statistics, a little bit of information, and some clear calls to action. Clear call to action. What is the steps they can do? Maybe you leave them with 1 to 3 things they can go home and do. So you really inspire them and show them again through your stories, this is possible. It is possible for you. It's possible for anybody with a normal mind to do this, because most of the things, almost anything is possible for us. I mean, so identifying the needs of the audience is the first thing, and then you want to tailor it around that and find your stories, your personal stories. You can find personal stories from your own life. You can find stories maybe from your workplace, and you can take a story every now and then from somewhere else. But your main part of the presentation should be stories trying to help the audience, getting that belief. Does that kind of help a little bit? Does it answer your question? Yeah, but it's like a little bit like a dance, you know. Nobody is the same. So I mean, I'm quite energetic on stage, but it doesn't mean everybody should be that. I've seen great speakers almost just stand and just be like so grounded. So you need to also find your style. What's your style?
Yeah, there's so many things to learn, and I think that takes so much practice, because these things I've tried to research them a lot on YouTube and on the internet. There's a lot of information, but like you said, it is not in the information, it's the belief. If you have to really live it, and that's that.
Yeah. And I would much rather have a passionate speaker that goes up there and just really shows that passion and tells it, and you can see he loves it, and rather than some boring speaker that have, 20, 30 years experience and just totally dry. It's about, loving it, emotional.
What were the worst moments on the stage?
Oh yeah, obviously that is going to come. I remember it was about 3 years, probably 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago. I got to speak at a network event. I was about 100 people that came there, and at that time, my twins were just about 6 months old. So, and I had an older daughter at that time; she's about 3.5. So obviously, sleep was not big on my schedule. So what happened was I was scheduled to speak 7 in the morning. So I will always warm up. I will warm my voice up. I will warm my body up. So I'm in the best possible state. So when I hit that stage, I just feel like a winner. This is going to be amazing, and I'm going to have fun and enjoy it. But that morning, I decided, you know what, Asger? You've done so many speeches. It's okay. You don't need to warm up. Get that half hour, 45 minutes of sleep more. So I skipped it, and I could just feel how nervous I was on the way to the place. And I started speaking. And after about, I think, 2, 3 minutes, I asked the audience a question. How do you make a great start? What are your tools? So they had to talk together. And there's this old alpha male sitting on the left to me up in the front. He came with a comment why my start was terrible. And I just remember I just, crumbled. Little Asger that didn't get the love and appreciation from his dad. I'm probably not worthy to be here. who am I to think that I should be on the stage? And it was just 20 minutes of pure pain to get through that presentation. It was, yeah, it just felt so terrible. And I was mad at myself for not preparing well enough. I was mad and frustrated because how could this one guy with that one phrase make me just completely collapse? Like I felt I had no backbone. So I went out there, I took an apple, I remember, from the buffet, went out and just hammered it into the ground and said, I thought, is this really it, Asger? Is this what you want to make a living off? If you cannot handle even that pressure. So I had a day. I thought a day, full day. Is this really gonna be it? And then I decided, you're gonna come back stronger. I am gonna come back stronger. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna grow. And yes, it did cost me some therapy lessons to get over this one, but it helped me. So now when I go on stage, I don't just go on my own. I have my own fan group, up in the spotlight up there. I have my best friends, I have my family, and they look at me, they support me. So if I should, for some reason, feel alone or getting that comment, and they obviously all knew each other and they had a good laugh on my expense, I know I'm worthy and they're there with me. So that's my fan group, and I bring them with me every time because we are human beings. We need love. We need to feel belonged. And that is a tool I use, and it makes me calm down. It makes me know that I'm loved and I belong to somebody. So that was the worst experience. But it was also a great tool because it helped me learn more. It helped me grow. But when it happens, it's obviously not fun. But then looking back, it's one of the best things that happened to me. So we learn from our mistakes. They're not fun, but ultimately those are the biggest learning points. But I see a lot of people always say we learn from our failures, which is true. We do, but it also needs to be, at least for me, I need to have a certain amount of successes for me because I'm a human being, and then, yeah, here's a failure. Okay, here I can improve. But that was obviously a big one. So yeah, that was a terrible moment being in front of those 100 people, and I felt maybe they pitied me for the next 20 minutes, and my voice just, so
Plumped.
yeah.
So how do you maneuver that? So he said something like that.
Yeah.
And
The
how
show
do you
had
react?
to go ahead.
How do you react?
Oh, I mean, I just answered his question, and he said, you need to introduce yourself first. And the fact was, I had been introduced by the conference chair at that place, and I think we shouldn't spend too much time talking about ourselves. And then I said, oh, my name is Asger, and just kind of continued. But obviously, I think everybody could see my confidence shattered. So I didn't have a big, strong scaffold at that time. So it's about having, like you said, we talked about this before we started our talk here, about having routines. Routines as a speaker is crucial. Like I have a routine before I go on stage. I have my own voice program. I will have some music I will listen to. I will make sure I get some laughs in. And if I can't find anything funny, I will just laugh anyway. And I'll think about the people I love. So I do spend a good 45 minutes, an hour before, just really getting in the state and having that rhythm. And then I come early to the venue. So you get to greet people, connect with them, and you're like, okay, they know me. It's comfortable because almost everybody's always, they want to see the speaker succeed. So those are some rituals you have, because then my body is primed for success. It's primed that I can do this. I can deliver. So finding routines to get you in a peak state, like any athlete, they will warm up.
How are your morning routines? Do you have any daily routine that you are really hang on to continue your success?
My morning routines are typically being waken up by my kids. They still get up pretty early. I would love that I could wake up an hour earlier than them. But when the day is over and I put them to sleep, I'm just, I do some reading. Maybe I do a little bit of work on my business, write something. So a lot of reading, watching things, trying to learn, put in a good hour of learning. That for me is important to keep learning, to keep growing. But the morning is much around the family. Yeah.
And that's also important.
It is. It's the most important for me, at least. So for me, it's a lot about having time to read, to learn, and at the moment, I'm diving into like breathing. I used to think a lot of health would be sleep, exercise, and the food we eat, but now I see breathing. Breathing is just as important. Having good breathing techniques. A lot of us we tend to come up here in our chest, but we really need to breathe with our diaphragm and get down into our abdominals. And you can use that to also change your own state.
Yeah. So controlling your breath and techniques. Are you training that?
Yeah.
Is that an exercise?
Yeah, I can give you an exercise. Actually, one I just did before the show here started, which I learned from Steve Severin, one of his newsletters. He's this, I think he held his breath for 22 minutes, and he's just an expert really on breathing. He knows so much about this. So one of the things he does is like the thing that makes us calm, that makes us relaxed, is actually when we breathe out. You know that if you make a sigh, you're like, that's where you get your relaxation. And most people, if we think about it, until we think, I need to take in the air, but that's actually the stressor. You become a little bit stressed when you take in the air, and then when you breathe out, you relax. So the trick is really having a long breath out, long breath out. So what I learned from him, and I can measure it if I have my pulse watch on, I can see my pulse will drop. And if you lie on the bed and do some other techniques, you can really lower your pulse. I can get it lower than when I'm sleeping with these techniques. So I get relaxed. So, but the technique is really put your arms out in front of you, and then you will breathe in. And you hold a little bit. Yeah, you have them here together. Put your arms together here. Can you, like you clap? Like if you're clapping, yeah, right? And then you'll pull them, and then you breathe in through your nose, and you pull them outwards. You put them as like the Titanic scene. Yeah, there you go. Then you breathe in. So you open your lungs.
Okay, so we're here.
Yeah, and then you put them out and you breathe in through your nose. You hold a little bit, 1-2 seconds, and then you breathe out through the mouth. This time through the mouth, slowly, about twice as long as your in breath. So this is an exercise. So usually you don't want to breathe out through your mouth, but the reason we do it now is because you purse your mouth. You kind of close it a little bit, meaning you push the air out, but because the hole in your mouth is so little, it takes you a long time to breathe out, right? You have a higher pressure in your lungs, meaning you have more CO2 in your blood for a longer time. And what happens is we have this substance called hemoglobin, which the oxygen attaches to. See, the oxygen in our blood is released when the CO2 level goes up. So if you can have more CO2 in your blood, you get to release more air or more oxygen in your cells. So that means you need fewer breaths, and you can have a better use of the oxygen in your body. So it's actually healthy to have some slower out breath and improve your oxygenation through that. So yeah, that I use breathing, and there's some other techniques. It's still pretty new for me. I've been reading the last 3-4 weeks about this, but I can really feel it helps me. And I also teach this when I'm doing speaker training. I've done this for a longer time, where just, you need to think about your breath. This particular exercise I've given them when I do my training. And if you do it, you go home, everybody that watches this, go home. If you have a pulse watch, you can measure your pulse. You can also just measure it yourself. And then you can see it will drop, and you can feel it. You can really feel it in your body. So if you have any kind of important meeting or presentation, or like we talked about, a date, whatever, and you want to be in a peak state, that could be a really good tool to really calm yourself down, get some good air, get refreshed.
I think because when anxiety takes over, it's over. It's tough. It's tough to get yourself back to normal, and it's good to prepare yourself instead of going there, being anxious, and afraid of public speaking. Or so preparation, like you said, it's very, very important.
Yes, it is very important. And also, like you said, when anxiety hits, it's hard to do something. So for me, I think it has been a better way for me to use my body, because that I can still control. I can always do that exercise. But if I get negative thoughts, at least for me, it is harder to change that. It's easier for me to use my body. For instance, also, if I have a speaking engagement, a great way to get rid of your stress is just to walk. Cortisol, the stress hormone cortisol, you burn that off when you walk. Because if the lion is hunting you down, you don't walk, you run, right? So if you're in a good state, you walk. You have time. So if you can do a walk, and if you're nervous the day before, have a good 1 hour walk. Burn that cortisol off. Do it on the day if you're speaking later.
So controlling your breath and have a walk, and try to research maybe how to give a speech, and go practice. Maybe in front of your family at first, so they can give you feedback. And I also noticed one thing more, actually. I learned it from Jordan Peterson. He looks directly into the people's eyes when he speaks. And so he's not communicating with 50,000 people. He's communicating with one at a time. So he looks at you and shifts his eyes from person to person while he tells the stories. He's amazing at communicating.
He is such a great speaker. I mean, I love his talks, and I love you can feel that passion, and those eyes, man, they capture you. If you're sitting there, you're not gonna, if you're a student, you're not gonna be like, oh, Facebook. I don't think so. You're like, I got you. It's like, boom. It's like being an animal that is hunting you down. But the beautiful thing he does, it's done with love. You can feel he wants to do well for you. At least that's what the feeling I get. But it's very powerful, that those eyes. So really like you said, get that eye contact, look them in the eyes, because when we look somebody in the eyes, it's not just, we don't just see the face. We don't just see the eyes. We look into the soul. We get to look deeper. So if you are a speaker and you truly want to connect with your audience and you have little time, you got to get that eye contact, because they will remember that. It's like, he looked just at me. Wow. Right. And maybe you looked at somebody else, but because it was further down in the rows, they felt you were just looking at them. So good eye contact plus a smile to soften it, because it can be a little bit intimidating with very strong eye contact. That is just the beauty.
I think it's very, very important, because it's like having a cable and you connect it to that person. Now we are in communication. Now we're talking in every direction. You are not connecting with anyone. It's like having this is why we say you have to have a niche. You have to have an audience to talk to when communicating your brand, otherwise you're communicating with everybody. And if you communicate with everybody, you are not communicating with anyone.
That's also true. Yeah. Yeah. True.
Asger, any last words?
I don't know. I mean, it's just been a huge pleasure to be here on the show. I'm so happy you invited me, and I look forward to us doing this in the studio. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. It was a lot of fun, and I hope everybody listening here, you get a lot of value out of it.
I hope that too. I hope that too. And thank you for spending your time with me. It's amazing to hear your stories and techniques on how we do things. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.